I always believed silence had a sound. I learned what it was on December 25th. It is the sound of your own heartbeat, echoing in a house that is too big and too empty. It is the hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of a blanket, adjusted just to break the quiet for a single second. That was my Christmas. There was no laughter, no crinkling of wrapping paper, no sizzle from the kitchen. There was just the tree, my small artificial tree, its lights twinkling merrily against the window. It looked so cheerful. It felt like it was mocking me. I sat in my armchair, the one that has held me for 20 years. I watched the lights blink, on and off and on, a silent, colorful pulse in a still, gray day. And I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of final understanding, the smile you wear when the last piece of a painful puzzle clicks into place. This was my life now, this quiet, this solitude, on the day meant to be the loudest, most crowded, most loving day of the year. They had all called, of course. My son Mark, my daughter Lisa. A few days before, their voices were bright and busy and full of the pleasant chaos of their own lives. "We'll call you on the day, Mom." "Okay. We love you." And I had said, "I love you too. Have a wonderful time." I meant it. I truly did. But hanging up the phone felt like closing a very heavy book. The story was over. This quiet day, this was just the empty space on the shelf afterward. To understand that silence, you have to understand the noise that came before it. My home wasn't always this quiet. For decades, it was the noisiest, most wonderful place. It was the sound of little feet running down this hallway. It was the sound of my husband, David, tinkering in the garage. It was the sound of teenage music bleeding from behind a closed bedroom door, and my protests to turn it down. It was the sound of dinner table debates, and homework frustrations, and bedtime stories read with silly voices. David and I built this life in this house. We chose the paint colors together. We planted the oak tree in the backyard when Mark was born. We added the family room when Lisa came along. Every corner, every scratch on the floor held a memory. This was not just a house. It was the container for our entire world. The children grew up, as children do. They went to college. They fell in love. They started careers and families of their own in cities hours away. It was a natural, beautiful progression. We were so proud. David and I settled into a new rhythm together. A quieter one, but a full one. We had our routines. Morning coffee on the porch. Evening walks around the neighborhood. We talked about traveling one day. Just the two of us. Then, 5 years ago, David left on one of his walks and never came back. A sudden, quiet heart attack on the corner of Maple and 3rd Street. The noise of my life didn't just soften. Then, it stopped. Abruptly. The silence that followed his passing was a physical thing. A thick, heavy blanket that smothered every room. The children were wonderful. They came immediately. They stayed for a while. They handled the arrangements, held my hand, filled the silence with their own presence, and the presence of my young grandchildren. For a few weeks, the house felt alive again. But then, they had to go back to their jobs, their schools, their lives. I understood. I told them I would be fine. I hugged them tightly at the door, waving until their cars vanished from sight. And then, I turned around. I faced the empty house. And I learned the first lesson of being alone. You have to become friends with the quiet. So, I did. I developed my own little routines. I joined a book club at the library. I volunteered to read to children at the elementary school on Tuesdays. I spoke to David's photograph every morning. I made 1 plate for dinner, not 2. I was lonely, yes. A deep, constant ache. But I was managing. I was building a fragile peace. Holidays were the anchor points. They were the days the silence was contractually obliged to break. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. Those were the days my children would come home. They would bring their spouses, their children, their energy. For a few glorious days, the house would ring with its old music. The oven would be on for days. Beds would be made up in every room. Toys would cover the living room floor. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely perfect. It was the fuel that kept me going through the quiet months in between. I lived for those days. The first sign was small. 2 years ago, for Thanksgiving. Lisa called a week before. "Mom," she said, her voice hesitant. "Would you be terribly upset if we started alternating?" "Alternating?" I asked. "You know, 1 year we come to you. The next year, you come to us. Or we go to Steve's parents. It's just the drive with the kids is so long. And packing everything, it's getting harder." There was a hollow feeling in my stomach, but I heard the tiredness in her voice. I pictured my grandchildren, fussy in car seats. "Of course, darling," I said, my voice bright. "That makes perfect sense. You should stay home this year. Have a cozy Thanksgiving with Steve's family." "Are you sure?" she asked, relief flooding her words. "Absolutely sure," I lied. That Thanksgiving, I went to the community dinner at the senior center. The food was fine. The people were nice. But I came home to my silent house, and for the first time, it felt less like a home and more like just a building where I lived. The next Christmas, they all came. But it felt different. The noise was the same, but the rhythm was off. My son-in-law, Steve, spent half the time on his laptop, just checking in on work. My daughter-in-law, Amanda, was constantly on her phone, taking pictures for something called an Instagram story. The grandchildren, older now, were absorbed in their tablets and handheld games. Their laughter was for the screens in their hands, not for the board games I had dug out of the closet. I tried. I really tried. "Who wants to help Grandma make the pies?" I asked. "In a minute, Grandma," little Chloe said, her eyes glued to a cartoon. That minute never came. At dinner, the conversation felt forced. I asked about their lives, their schools. I got short, polite answers before the talk shifted between the adults to things I didn't understand. Startup funding, real estate markets in their cities, a viral video everyone had seen except me. I just smiled and passed the gravy. I felt like a guest at my own table, a kindly, old guest who didn't quite speak the language. After they left, the house wasn't just quiet. It felt depleted. It took me a week to clean up, to put everything back in its place. And with each toy I put away, each sheet I washed, I felt a piece of my hope crumbling. This tradition, this anchor, it was slipping. Last summer, I fell. It was a silly thing. I was reaching for a vase on a high shelf in the garage. The step stool wobbled, and I came down hard on my wrist. It broke. It was a clean break, but it meant I couldn't drive for 6 weeks. I couldn't even chop vegetables properly. I called Mark. I hated to bother him, but I needed help. "Mom, I'm in the middle of a huge project launch," he said, his voice tense. "I can't get away. Can you get a grocery delivery? Or maybe hire someone to help for a few weeks?" I told him not to worry. I told him I'd figure it out. And I did. I used a delivery service. My lovely neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, would come over and help me with things that needed 2 hands. I managed. But the message was clear, even if it was never spoken aloud. Your emergencies are an inconvenience to our real lives. The phone calls became shorter, more routine. "Hi, Mom, just checking in. Everything's crazy here. Kids are good. We're good. Love you. Talk soon." They were sound bites, updates, not conversations. I found myself saving up little stories to tell them about my book club's funny debate or the child at the school who read his first full sentence, but I never got the chance. The calls always ended before I could share my small world. And then, this year. The plans for Christmas started in October, like they always did. Or like they used to. I waited for someone to bring it up. No one did. Finally, in mid-November, I called Lisa. "So, my darling," I said, trying to sound casual, "what are we thinking for Christmas this year? Should I get the guest rooms ready?" There was a pause, a long, telling pause. "Oh, Mom," she said, "we've actually been talking. The travel last year was just so brutal. And with James having hockey camp right after, we were thinking of staying put this year. Having a quiet one at home. Just the four of us." "I see," I said, my voice very small. "But you should come here," she said, the idea seeming to occur to her as she said it. "We'd love to have you." It was a kind offer. But the thought of packing a bag, getting a ride to the airport, flying alone, being a guest in their busy, unfamiliar house, it felt overwhelming. It felt like I would be intruding on their quiet Christmas. Just the four of us. "That's sweet, honey," I said. "Let me think about it." I called Mark. His plan was similar. They were going to Amanda's parents in Florida. "They have a pool, Mom. The kids are so excited." "You're welcome to join, of course." Again, the tag-on invitation. The afterthought. I thanked him. I said I would think about it. But we all knew I wouldn't go. I hung up the phone and looked around my living room. At David's chair. At the marks on the wall where the children's height had been recorded. This was my home. This was where my Christmas lived. If they weren't coming to it, then there was no Christmas to go to. So, I made a decision. I would have my own Christmas. A proper one. Just for me. I wasn't going to be sad. I was going to celebrate the peace and the memories. I put up the tree. I played my old Christmas CDs. Perry Como, Nat King Cole. I baked a small turkey breast, just for myself, with all the trimmings. I even set the table. One place setting, with my best china and a little Christmas cracker I'd bought for myself. It was bittersweet, but there was a strange dignity in it. I was choosing how to spend my day. Christmas Eve arrived. I was content in my plan. Then, the video call came. It was the family group call. Mark, Lisa, and all the grandchildren. Their faces filled my tablet screen, pixelated and bright. "Merry Christmas, Grandma," they all shouted, a joyful, chaotic chorus. They were in Mark's living room. I could see a huge tree in the background, piled with presents. Everyone was wearing matching pajamas, red and green plaid. I hadn't known about the matching pajamas. "Look at you all," I said, my heart swelling and breaking at the same time. "You look so wonderful." They took turns showing me what Santa had already left for them. They told me about the cookies they were going to leave out. It was a beautiful, happy scene. A scene I was watching through a screen. Then my grandson, Ethan, looked right at the camera. He was 7. "Grandma," he said, his face curious, "why aren't you here? Don't you have pajamas like us?" The room went quiet for a second. The adults shifted uncomfortably. Lisa jumped in. "Grandma is having her own special Christmas at her house, sweetie. It's quieter there." "Oh," Ethan said, not really understanding. "But it's more fun here." The call ended with more "I love yous" and promises to call again tomorrow. I sat holding the dark tablet in my hands. The silence after that call was different. It was no longer just an absence of sound. It was an affirmation. You are not here. You are there. We are here. I went to bed that night, but I didn't sleep. I listened to the silence. I thought about the matching pajamas. A small, silly thing. But it was a symbol. They were a unit. A complete, matching set. And I was the leftover piece from an old, discontinued puzzle. Christmas morning dawned, cold and bright. I went through my motions. I made coffee. I turned on the tree lights. I opened the presents they had mailed. a lovely sweater from Lisa, a fancy coffee blend from Mark. I called them to thank them. Their voices were full of breakfast noise and wrapping paper chaos in the background. "We'll call you later, when it calms down, Mom," they both said. I knew they meant it. But I also knew that later would be short. They would be tired. The children would be overstimulated. It would be another quick, kind, distracted call. I sat down with my coffee. I looked at the empty chair across from me, David's chair, and I did something I hadn't allowed myself to do in years. I spoke to him out loud, not in a whisper, but in my normal voice. "Well, David," I said, "it's just you and me again." The silence answered. But this time, I answered back. "I'm lonely," I said to the empty room. The words hung in the air, simple and true. I am so terribly lonely. Admitting it was like opening a valve. The brave face I had been wearing for my children, for my neighbors, for myself, it dissolved. I didn't cry hysterically. I just sat as tears rolled quietly down my cheeks. I cried for the noise that was gone. I cried for the husband who wasn't in his chair. I cried for the children who had grown up and away. I cried for the grandmother who felt like a photograph to her grandchildren, someone you look at and say hello to, but don't really know. This was the turning point. Not a dramatic argument, or a cruel word. It was this quiet, sunny Christmas morning, sitting alone in a room full of memories, finally admitting the truth to myself, and to the empty after the tears came a strange calm. The sadness didn't leave, but it settled. It became a part of me, like the arthritis in my hands, a familiar ache. I didn't make the turkey that day. I made myself some soup. I wrapped myself in a blanket, and I watched an old movie. I didn't answer the phone when it rang in the evening. I let it go to voicemail. I needed to sit with my truth, without anyone's cheerful, distracted voice trying to paint over it. The next day, I listened to the voicemails. They were sweet. "Hope you had a great day, Mom. We missed you." I could hear the truth in the space between their words. They had missed the idea of me, but they had not missed my actual presence enough to change their plans. And for the first time, I wasn't angry or hurt about that. I just accepted it. This was their time, their chaotic, beautiful, demanding time of building careers and raising children. My time for that was done. A week after Christmas, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went for a walk without a destination. I just walked. I saw my neighbors' houses, their decorations still up. I saw families through windows, still together. But the sharp sting was gone. It was just a fact. I walked past the elementary school where I volunteered. It was closed for the break. I walked past the library, and I found myself standing outside the senior center. The lights were on. On a whim, I went inside. It wasn't for a holiday meal. It was just open. A few people were sitting in the common area, reading or working on a puzzle. A man about my age was fiddling with a coffee maker. "Can't get this darn thing to work," he muttered. "Here," I said. "Let me try. I've had a lifetime of battles with coffee makers." I showed him the trick. The filter wasn't seated right. We got it going. His name was Walter. His wife had passed away 3 years ago. His children were also far away. We sat and had a cup of coffee together. We didn't talk about our loneliness. We talked about the terrible coffee, about the weather, about a book he was reading. It was simple. It was human. That small connection was a crack of light in my silent world. I started going to the senior center more often, not for the activities, but just to be around other people who understood the quiet. I met Eleanor, who loved gardening like I did. I met Ben, who was a whiz at crossword puzzles and loved to argue about the clues. Slowly, very slowly, I began to build a new community, a chosen family of sorts. We didn't have decades of shared history, but we had a shared present. We had the shared understanding of what it meant to have a quiet house, and a life that was in its later, quieter chapters. I called my children. I told them about my new friends. I think they were relieved. They could hear a lightness in my voice that hadn't been there before. "I'm so glad you're getting out, Mom," Lisa said, genuinely. This time, I wasn't pretending. I was glad. I didn't stop loving my children or my grandchildren. That love is permanent, etched into my soul. But I stopped expecting that love to fill my days. I had to fill my own days with small things: a new rose bush for the garden, a challenging puzzle with Ben, teaching Eleanor how to use her new tablet so she could see photos of her great-grandchildren. The silence in my house changed. It was no longer an enemy, a hollow reminder of what was missing. It became a companion, a space for my own thoughts, a space where I could sit and remember David without the sharp pain, but with a soft, grateful warmth. I could look at the height marks on the wall and smile at the memory, not cry over its distance. Chair across from me. The life I had been clinging to, the life of busy holidays and crowded tables, was over. It had been over for a while, and I had just been pretending it wasn't. This silence was my new reality, and I had to learn how to live inside it, not just visit it between phone calls. That silent Christmas was my gift. It was the most painful gift I have ever received, but it was honest. It forced me to look at my life not as a story that was over, but as a story that had simply entered a new, quieter chapter. The lesson I learned is this: we spend our lives building circles of connection. First our family of origin, then our chosen partner, then our children. Those circles are vibrant and loud and all-consuming. And then, one by one, those circles change. They move outward, orbiting their own new centers. It is not a betrayal. It is the natural order of life. The love doesn't disappear. It transforms. But it leaves you in the center of your own life again. And you have a choice. You can sit in the empty center and mourn the noise that has drifted away. Or you can begin the slow, quiet work of building a new circle around yourself. A circle based not on obligation or biology, but on shared cups of coffee, quiet companionship, and the simple peace of understanding. My house is still quiet. But now, sometimes, I invite the silence in for tea. We sit together, and I am no longer afraid of it. I have made my peace with the quiet. And in doing so, I found I could still hear the most important sound of all, the steady, resilient beat of my own heart, still here, still capable of connecting, still capable of finding moments of quiet joy in the winter sun. My story isn't of betrayal. It's a quiet realization. Learning the end of one kind of love is not the end of love. It's a change in the music, from a loud symphony to a softer solo. And even a solo can be beautiful if you learn to listen. If this story of quiet strength and finding light in loneliness resonated with you, please support our channel by subscribing. We share new, heartfelt stories every week. Your subscription helps us bring more of these gentle, powerful narratives to you. Thank you for listening.